reach for me. Don't wanna wait another day without you. Take me to higher ground. We'll be safe and sound. Reach for me. Should have known right away when it felt too good to be true. 'Cause you never said what you mean to say. So anyway, you look at it, I'm confused. If you can see where this is gonna lead, reach for me. Don't wanna wait another day without you. Take me to higher ground. Come on, reach for me. I can't wait another day without you. Take me to higher ground. We'll be safe and sound. Reach for me. Reach for me. Got it all figured out. You decide what's best for you. 'Cause you built me up, so don't let me down. I can't make you do what you don't want to. You can see where this is gonna lead. Reach for me. Don't wanna wait another day without you. Take me to higher ground. Come on, reach for me. I can't wait another day without you. Take me to higher ground. We'll be safe and sound. Reach for me. Come on, reach for me. Don't wanna wait another day without you. Take me to higher ground. Come on, reach for me. I can't wait another day without you. Take me to higher ground. We'll be safe and sound. Reach for me. Reach for me.
Mayor, I think all these people are here to hear Reverend Dennis Burns give his. I want to welcome you all to the regular City Council meeting of April 8th. And clerk, if you would please call us to take the roll call.
Mayor Hartkey,
Here.
Vice Mayor Stewart,
Here.
Councilmember Harris,
Here.
Councilmember Lopez,
Here.
Councilmember Rowe,
Here.
Councilmember Ellis,
Here.
Councilmember Orlando.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, clerk. Our invocation tonight will be brought forth by Reverend Denise Burns of Chandler Church of the Nazarene. Our Pledge of Allegiance by Councilmember Terry Rowe. Reverend, welcome.
Thank you. Let us pray. Gracious Father, you who made us and know us so intimately, here we are this evening for 100 different reasons to come into this room to speak about community. And Lord, we pray that you would provide safety, safe discourse, kind words, gentle understanding, and physical safety as we discuss the ways to make our community safe and stronger, because that is how you have designed us to live in community. And so we do thank you for this opportunity to speak together, to work together, to be together, all in the name of your kingdom. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend. Thank you, Council Member. Council, we've got a consent item as well, or consent items as well as an action item. I do have a couple comments to make. First of all, if you were here for photo radar tonight, that has been postponed. So I didn't hear a corporate groan up in the audience, so hopefully that you knew that, and that will be rescheduled for an upcoming meeting. And I know I made a point of, and I think other council members did too, of letting people know that at least had emailed us, but that will be on an upcoming meeting. Before we vote tonight, I did want to highlight one item in particular that council was very much behind. At the beginning of the pandemic, council worked with our city staff to take strong measures to reduce spending. This included a hiring freeze, a travel freeze, and all sorts of other things, a very austere measures over the past year, because we did not know the impact or the full results of what this pandemic was going to do. And on the agenda tonight is a one-time performance award to all regular full-time and regular part-time employees, including our sworn public safety personnel. The only ones excluded from that are, I believe, those of us up here. So, and we had several $1 million in savings because we ended up with about 120 positions in that hiring freeze that we did not fill. So out of those vacancy savings, there is an agenda item tonight to reinvest a significant amount of those dollars back into our employees. Regular full-time employees will receive $3,000. Regular part-time employees will receive $1,500. And of course, our public safety folks received a market adjustment as well. So I do want to personally thank Team Chandler for your dedication during this past year, during this pandemic. It's been extremely hard. I know there's been a lot of weariness, not only amongst our public safety folks, but amongst all, having to not have others fill the ranks and other demands. And through these daunting challenges, Team Chandler rose to the occasion, worked tirelessly to ensure our residents' quality of life and to achieve access to services were unaffected. So I'm very proud of Team Chandler and the innovation displayed by staff to overcome challenges. And again, a big thank you to Chandler for your exceptional performance over this past year. So council, unless there's any other comments, a motion would be in order.
Mayor,
Councilmember Orlando.
I move that we approve the regular meeting agenda dated April 8, 2021. I think there's items 1 through 16 and item 18.
A second.
So we have a motion and a second.
Mayor, if I may, can I just confirm that motion includes the additional stipulations on item 7?
Yes.
Thank you.
I think in staff summary it had that, but yes, thank you for clarifying that.
Thank you, City Attorney, for that call, since that came in after the Planning and Zoning meeting. Vice Mayor.
There was a comment card in support of this project.
Oh, yeah, thank you. There is one comment cord that was in support of Serena Estates, and we'll be reading that, or that will be into the record that will be forthcoming. So thank you for that catch, but we'll make sure that that gets into the written record of what's before us.
Mayor.
Councilmember Lopez.
Also, I just wanted to point out again, another big thank you. As part of Team Chandler, we have our staff, but we also have a vast number of volunteers in our citizenry that help out on our boards and commissions, that provide us advice and guidance in many, many facets that we operate in the city. So that those individuals can sacrifice their time with families and friends and from work in order to help keep our city running as great, efficient, and effective as we do. So I want to also point out and a thank you to all those that do serve on our boards and commissions. Thank you.
All right. Seeing no others, council, please vote.
Motion carries unanimously.
All right, thank you, City Clerk. Next, we have a discussion and possible action item. This is related to public safety. This came out of a subcommittee discussion on public safety that was attended by Councilmember Harris, Councilmember Orlando, Councilmember Rowe. I do want to thank you, Councilmember Orlando, for bringing forth this item. We all have a strong interest in public safety in our community, and in conversation with council members up here, I found a strong commitment to ensure that our public safety departments are well equipped with staffing and with resource, and I expect to see that reflected this year in particular as we go through the budget and the budget decisions later this month and next month as well. This commitment will carry its way through this year's budget conversations, as well as we look at how do we make sure that we have a complete staff and what is needed into future years as well. So I'd like to call up Chief Duggan for his presentation, and we do have one written card that will be read into that also will be part of the record that was submitted here. I have a couple speaker cards from each of our unions, and council, if we could give Chief Duggan the opportunity to share his presentation, and then I'll open it up for complete discussion up here with each of us. We're going to have plenty of time to be able to do that as well. So,
Mayor,
all right. So,
Mayor.
Chief Duggan.
Mayor, I want to say a couple words beforehand.
Okay,
Thank
please.
you, appreciate it. Chief, I thank you. And, you know, as the mayor said earlier, all the employees, we need to thank you, particularly our police and firefighters. I know you guys and gals out there took the brunt of a lot of this over the last year, and it's not getting any easier for you. And we're here to help you and get through this process. So as the mayor indicated earlier, COVID exposed a lot of deficiencies in our lives. It also exposed some concerns we have in the city, IP, for example. So it's not unique to us that we're the only community here that has to do a dynamic change in our thought processes. And the you know, the issues that we faced over the last year just exacerbated the issues we had, mental health, social issues, as well as COVID in its entirety. These issues showed vulnerabilities in our lives and I guess indicated our city. So we had our meeting, as the mayor indicated earlier. Thank you for the introduction. And Councilmember Harris and Rowe, myself, sat down and listened to the chiefs explain their issues. And it came home that there's some dynamic changes within our policing. And just like the firefighters about 15 years ago had to look at a dynamic change in their business model, because they went from purely firefighters, and then they looked at their business model, they realized that they're more in the medical and healthcare business. And they remodeled, they rechanged. And it was eye-opening to me, Chief, your discussion of where our policing has gone over the last few years. And again, I think it's just compounded because of COVID. So I thought it was a compelling story. I thought it was a compelling issue that we bring this forward and let the council hear and the public, quite frankly, hear of where our police department is today on tackling the challenges. And one more word, and I'll let you go. You indicated one very strong word to me, or the verbs the other day when we were talking about this. You said the old 1930 Herbert Hoover model of keeping track of rapes and murder and burglars still is concerned, but our police officers are now metric in other areas. So I think that's an interesting stir of dynamics. That's why I wanted to lead off with this. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mayor.
Chief, please proceed. And again, Council, if we could let him go through his presentation and then we'll ask our questions afterwards, please. Continue.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, good evening, everyone, Mayor, members of council. I do appreciate this opportunity to provide just a few updates on overall crime in our city, the state of the police department, and then some of the challenges that we are facing today. First, I thought it important just to maybe provide some context, and that has to do with our population. And if you look at this slide over the past 10 years, we've had a steady increase in population in our city. And as this population continues to grow, we've also had a significant reduction in crime over that same period. And this chart represents the Part 1 crimes. Those are those serious crimes, the traditional crime, whether it's rape, homicide, murder, burglary, arson, theft, assault. Those are the crimes that we report on, that we track, and we report to the FBI, as does every other community. And that indicates our crime rate, which is represented in this slide. And what we see is that the overall crime rate last year was 20.5 Part 1 crimes per 1,000 residents. That, in fact, is the lowest crime rate ever recorded in the city of Chandler, and a significant increase over time. And obviously, last year with COVID, it was a bit of an anomaly in many ways. And although overall crime was reduced, we did have some upticks in crime. For example, auto theft and commercial burglaries, we saw upticks in, but most all other crime, especially residential burglary and assaults, were down significantly overall, which contributed to this low crime rate. But I think more impactful is the crime index. And the crime index is the volume of crime, the volume. How many of those Part 1 crimes occurred in our city last year? And again, if you look at the chart, there were just under 5,500 Part 1 crimes in Chandler last year. The last time the city of Chandler experienced 5,500 Part 1 crimes was in 1987, when our population was about 80,000 people. So today, with almost 200,000 more people, we're experiencing roughly the same volume amount of crime as we did in 1987. So what I'm trying to convey here is, by traditional measures, that how we are compared against other cities. Chandler routinely ranks as one of the safest cities in this country, cities with populations over 250,000 people. So that's something that we certainly take great pride in. In this chart, it just highlights where the crime occurs as far as what type of crime. And the overwhelming majority of crime that does occur in our city is property crime. And that's led by thefts, and specifically thefts from items in cars. So essentially people breaking into cars. That is our largest crime by volume. But theft is a common crime in our city. And it's a bit of a double-edged sword, because we want people to feel safe. But sometimes people don't take the basic precautions, and simply locking your car, removing valuables from your car, or closing your garage door, that would lead to a significant reduction in theft and burglaries in our community. In fact, there are some areas in our city where 50% or more of those thefts and burglaries are preventable. So again, through that education and being out there, being engaged, we want to help people and ideally prevent things from happening in the first place. So not to be alarmist, but we still need to take those basic precautions to protect ourselves. In response to some of the crime that we've seen over the past few years, this past year, we entered into a partnership. We entered into a task force with the FBI. It's called the Safe Trails Task Force, which is comprised of Chandler police officers, FBI agents, and members of the Gila River Police Department. And their focus is primarily on that trans-border crime between the reservation and our city. And that is certainly paying dividends, and we've had a number of successes as a result of that partnership. But when I talk about crime overall, again, we are a very safe community when you look at the totality. But we do have crime, and we have problems, and we have concerns in our city. For example, last year, we experienced 75 shootings in our city, where 110 people were shot at, including 10 police officers. We had 26 people shot last year, including 3 Chandler police officers. And we had 8 people killed as a result of gunfire. And you look at the trajectory, well, frankly, it's alarming. So this is an area that, as a result, we have paid considerable attention to. In fact, this is the #1 priority in our police department right now. In fact, we took resources, coveted resources from patrol and detectives, and we formed our own task force, the gun violence task force, to address and hopefully mitigate and first understand the why behind this. So we are working within the department, but we're also working within the city and other city departments to try to get an understanding of what's happening, because we have a pretty good understanding of where it's happening, but we just don't know the why. And we're trying to put those pieces together so we can prevent these shootings from occurring. This year already, we've had 27 shootings. So our trajectory is not going in the right direction, but this is something that is priority #1 for our police department. Another area of concern is our increase in sexual assaults over the years. And there are many complicated reasons for some of these increases. But we know through the data that very few of these assaults are random. In fact, the overwhelming majority of these assaults happen between people that know each other. And the majority of these assaults happen in homes. So our efforts over the years to bring attention to removing the stigma of reporting sexual assaults, we believe is a contributing factor. But nevertheless, every single one of these investigations is complicated, it's laborious, and it has an impact on our employees, as you can imagine. So this is something that, again, we know that we need to pay more attention to and address. So I already talked about gun violence and sex crimes, but there are other issues that are not measured through the traditional tracking from the FBI Part 1 crimes. And just take homelessness, for example. Last year, our officers responded to over 1,300 calls for service regarding homelessness. And remember, being homeless is not a crime. But the problem is that there are no other resources to call. Because of history and a variety of societal changes or failures, the reality today is that the police are the entity, at least the first contact for homelessness. Right, wrong, that's just the reality. And our officers are dealing with that multiple times a day. And another issue, again, through a variety of reasons, but the reality is today that we are also the first responders to mental health issues. And we had almost 1,000 mental health related calls for service last year. And 574 of those are mental health petitions. By state law, by statute, police, we are responsible for transporting people from one location, whether it's in a residence or a hospital even. And if they have a signed petition from a court to take a person to a facility for a mental health checkup, it's the police that are responsible for doing these transports. So, and you see the increased rate, it's increasing exponentially year after year. So this is an issue that's not being addressed throughout society. And right now, again, it falls in the lap of the police. Another area that is a significant concern and a drawing of resources and time and energy and capital are crimes that, quite frankly, didn't exist less than a generation ago. So the discussion about Herbert Hoover creating the Part 1 crime index or matrix in the 30s, there were no internet crimes in the 1930s. There were no internet crimes in the 1980s. This is a relatively new phenomenon. So our officers every single day are dealing with internet crimes against children or human trafficking, certainly financial crimes, identity theft, very complex crimes that, quite frankly, in many ways, we are having a very difficult and challenging time keeping up with the pace of the increase in these type of crimes. And then throughout, well, the last 8 months, we're not even through the year, we've had, and quite frankly, I lost count, it's either 29 or 30 protests in our city. And the reality is that our policing model is not set up for protest. Our policing model is established based on historical data, what has happened in the past, and then we can predict the number of officers we need. And I'll talk a little more about that in a moment. But we look at what happened in the past and what happens on an average day, and that is how policing is staffed. So fortunately, we were able to rely on some of our neighboring jurisdictions, whether it was from Mesa to Tempe to DPS, Scottsdale, Gilbert, and multiple times this year, in addition to our 30 protests in our city, we also sent people to other jurisdictions to assist them. So it's been a very, very long year. And again, our staffing model does not support protests. So these events require significant overtime, but they require changing schedules and major disruption in people's lives and the lives of their families. So I am especially grateful and proud of the level of dedication and service and how our folks have stood up and done everything they can to help keep our community safe. But it has been exhausting. Couple that with COVID that everyone's experiencing, and it's been a tough year. So I talked about our staffing. I talked about crime. I talked about the new issues and challenges we're facing, and we are facing all of these challenges with the exact same number of police officers today than we had in 2008. And clearly the world has changed since 2008. So we continue to be a safe city, and the fact that we are still rated among the safest cities in the country is a testament to the men and women of this police department, our officers and our professional staff. That's just a fact. And we are dealing with issues that weren't even here 10 years ago. And with an increase in population and an increase in the complexities of the crime and the issues and the societal issues that we deal with, we're doing it with the same number of police officers as we had 11, 13 years ago. So what I'd like to do next is just to highlight and walk through some of the changes and advancements we've made over the past 5, 6, 7 years. So shortly after I was appointed chief, there was no mechanism to really gauge the number of officers on the street versus the number of officers we need. So we went out and we identified software that had been used in my past experience, but readily used throughout the valley, called Corona Solutions. And essentially it's a staffing analysis for patrol only. So we looked at the staffing and we completed this analysis, and we found out that our complement of officers assigned to patrol was short by 15 positions. That was recommended as a result of the staffing analysis. In fact, in 2018, I briefed the council individually on the methodology behind this staffing analysis that a few of you may remember. But it showed a delta of 15 officers for patrol. And I say patrol because this did not affect or address any of the other specialties or assignments throughout the department. And why patrol? Because patrol is the core of policing. It's a #1 priority. When someone calls 911 in a true emergency, they expect and they deserve a police officer there in short order. So patrol is #1, and everything else revolves around patrol. But when we looked at this, the very first thing we did is we looked internally. So where internally can we shore up? Where internally can we find resources to put back to patrol? So before I would ask council or anyone for resources, what are we doing internally? And what we found by that inward look is that there are positions that were filled by sworn officers, gun toters, basically, that those job duties could be performed by civilians. So for example, we had 2 sworn officers performing training as our firearms instructors. So we added 2 civilians to our complement as full-time firearms instructors, both former police. And then we took those 2 bodies and we assigned them to patrol. We had a housing officer that was a sworn officer. We hired a civilian housing officer to fulfill those duties and took that position and assigned it to patrol. We had a sworn officer assisting PDIT, and I'll mention that in a moment, a very important position, but the priority was patrol and still is patrol. So we took a position that was supporting our technology in the department and we took that position and put it back on the street. And then we were able to use a vacant position in PDIT, and we assigned that back to patrol. And then that same year, we did receive funding for 3 officers through decision packages. And then the next year, we identified, or someone identified, 2 positions from some other city departments. I don't want to go there because it's not very popular, but they were reassigned to police. And those 2 positions were then assigned to patrol. So by the end of 2018, we did a pretty good job closing that gap by adding 13 positions to patrol. And by being able to do that, we also added a new beat down in the more southern area of the city. We added what we call beat 18, but that is the area that was the largest beat geographically. Beat 17 we split into, so that has significantly improved our response times and of course a backup for officers. And then by mid 2019, we were able to have all the positions filled. So we identified 15 positions through reassignment, through reclassification, and then some through decision packages. And we were able to meet our need on patrol. So overall, over the last 7 years, we have added 14 officers to our complement. And that is, again, through reassignment or reclassification, or reclassification from other duties, and then through decision packages. So, and I mentioned the beat 18. So that kind of brings us to today and where we are with some of our staffing needs today. Everything I just mentioned, those 15 positions were for patrol. But what we didn't do is that we really have not adequately addressed for over a decade the needs throughout the rest of the department. So I'm just going to talk about some of those needs right now. So we can certainly benefit from, and the community could benefit from, additional detective support. We have seen an uptick in whether it's sex crimes, gangs, computer crimes, human trafficking, robbery, homicides. And this is not the first time that some of you may have seen this. These requests here were identified back in 2015 in our strategic plan, where we brought associations, we brought all employees together through planning sessions, and of course, members of the community. And then we updated the plan just last year. So these requests here for our future, this isn't something that's new as of today. It's been well documented for quite a while now. But another area that we would benefit significantly from would be an additional bike team that may be a hybrid neighborhood response team. Right now, we have 1 bike squad in the city, and it's supposed to be citywide, but the reality is it's basically dedicated to downtown, and as it should be, because that's a priority. But that means that the rest of the city doesn't benefit from that, and the precinct commanders don't have the resources to put in areas where we may see pattern crime or other issues. So our desire would be to increase the complement of officers and give them a little more, make them a little more nimble, so they can do, they can fill other roles besides just being a bike officer. Then, of course, I talked about just a few minutes ago about the growth and the exponential growth in the calls related to mental health. This is something that's been in our strategic plan from the very beginning, and to create a cadre of officers that have enhanced training, they have enhanced knowledge, they can dedicate their time full time to developing those partnerships with their mental health partners. They can be our trainers within our department, because obviously all officers are responding to those type of calls. But we can give this smaller group an enhanced level of training, and they can lead the way. And then at the end of the day, essentially just improve the outcomes between police and people with mental illness. And that is our goal and desire. And then training. My father started as a police officer in 1964. I started in 1986. And I can tell you without any hesitation that this job is fundamentally different than anything my father experienced and what I experienced as a new officer. We talked about the societal issues and the crime and disorder. These are generational, these are relatively new. So It is exponentially more difficult to be a police officer today than it has ever been in the history of policing in the city. So, in this country, rather. So, the need for quality and effective training has never been as important as it is now. And it would be a great benefit to enhance that training cadre so we make sure that we are providing that right training out to our officers and our personnel because our officers deserve it, and certainly the community expects it and deserves it. And then PDIT. Well, PDIT touches and supports every single aspect of policing, from our mobile office set up in our cars to our dashboards that they created to our mobile devices that we now communicate from, and of course our body cameras, just for example. And earlier, while we were trying to make patrol right sized over the years, we did take positions from PDIT because at the time that was critical. We had to support patrol. But now that we're stable in patrol, patrol needs to be supported by technology. So certainly discussion worthy to increase and enhance our capabilities to support our officers when it comes to technology. And then our communication section. I know that I've often talked about how technology is changing the nature of policing, how it's changing the way that we receive information, how we process information, and how we push information out to our officers on the street. But I can't think of a single section in policing that has been affected more by technology than our communication section. So just in the last 5 years, they added over 40 new technologies to their capabilities, whether it's interfacing with our traffic cameras, interfacing with Ring doorbells, your Apple Watch. If you fall with your Apple Watch, it will send the latitude and coordinates to our 911 call center. I mean, just incredible technology and advancements just over the past few years. So this is an area that we need to make sure that we have the right technical expertise and certainly ensure that we are providing the right and type of training for our call takers and dispatchers. And then our support services from our crime analysts who really help us police smarter and more effectively. There's a limited amount of police officers on the street, and they can identify those areas through their data collection of what's happening, where it's happening. We can focus our time and energy there. Certainly, that's much more beneficial. Our forensics, we still need people to collect evidence out on the street. So I know a separate conversation about the laboratory that may come about as a result of a bond election. But today, we still need to collect the evidence out on the street, and we need to make sure that our processes now, we have the right level of quality insurance. And then, of course, our property records. Again, they touch all aspects of policing, and it's just an area that has not grown commensurate with the other growth in the department over the years. And then the final area is detention. And we entered into a partnership with the city town of Gilbert in 2014, where we share a facility. But the reality and the simple fact of the matter is when that partnership was stood up, we did not provide a proper, adequate staffing model. We are not adequately staffed in detention, and as a result, we have a lot of tired people, and we spend a considerable amount of overtime filling those gaps. And so does Gilbert, and that's something that we're incrementally working on. But that is it's a major concern, especially for the welfare of our folks working in detention. So those are some of the challenges that we're facing today. But like I said from the beginning, overall, the city's in very good shape. But to ensure that we continue down that path, we need to invest in our police. So that concludes my presentation, and I'd certainly be happy to try to answer any of your questions.
So Council, let's do this. Realizing I'd like to start, Councilmember Orlando, this is your question, and we'll work our way this way. Make sure that Councilmember Harris has a few good questions to ask. So we'll go back. We'll then come back and give you a chance. But if you could just ask a couple comments, a couple questions, and then refrain from, if you've got a page full, then we'll make sure that everyone has a second chance. So Councilmember Orlando.
Thank you, Mayor. And again, I'll yield to my colleagues on the left or the right side. That's okay if you want. But, Chief, thank you very much. Comprehensive report. I appreciate it. But a couple of things I keep hearing you saying. So this incident with these 3 officers and 2 detectives you pulled out of to go work the
Gun task
gun task force. So where did those bodies come from?
2 came from patrol, and the other 2 came from detective. Well, 3 came from patrol: supervisor, 2 officers, and 2 detectives.
So the fact that we have, quote, 149 officers, I know the exact number, we have a little bit less now because these are now taken out of this area to go work the strategic area, correct?
It'd be 2 less,
2 less.
2 less in under that category. Yes,
So those, but then you got detectives that were working on sex crimes and other things that won't be doing those things, correct?
they were working in gangs
Or
essentially,
gangs.
but yes,
So they're probably a transfer over. So the point I'm trying to make is that you have been, over the years, been looking at these task force and you're taking it from the existing employee patrol base or some kind of base to be able to go solve that particular problem. You don't have enough officers to say, hey, I could cover my beats 100% without overtime or some of the other things we need, but I have to go still do these targeted things for the community.
essentially yes. There is a mechanism to cover those beats through absent employee relief, um, but again, the issue is basically the issue is people are tired, and this is not a money issue any longer. This is not throwing money. The issue is pressing people to work, and it's been an exhausting year. So
Yeah.
we just leave it at that.
So how many officers do you have that can retire? They had their 20 years in.
I believe the number is 82 or 84. That's been pretty consistent over a number of years.
So that's consistent. And
That means 82. It's either 82 or 84.
okay,
Officers have 20 years or more of service.
so
So
they could
they're
literally,
retirement eligible at 20 years.
right. So they could literally leave, is what you're saying. Some of those, I don't think all 84.
Yes,
You're doing
yes.
such a great job on keeping the morale that you're going to stay.
Yes, we can.
Right? Okay. Just want to make sure of that. I don't want to ask too many more questions. I had a bunch of other questions here because I think the rest of council has. But my major concern is taking officers off the beat to go handle these other issues, the overtime, the overworking, that type of aspect, and some of these other things. If you take away, then we lose out in those particular expertise in those particular areas.
Well, every single day we are prioritizing, and that's in our
That's-
nature. It's what we do, whether it's calls coming into dispatch or what we focus on. Because obviously no one has unlimited resources. So every day we're juggling and prioritizing. The priority number 1 in the city right now is to address our gun crimes.
And how many overhires are you in the process right now? Overhires?
We have authorized 5 overhire positions funded through police, and there are another 10 positions that are available to us.
So again, this just continues to add to the multiplying effect of the issues you're facing today. Some of these concerns.
Issues meaning?
Well, some of the challenges you're facing. I mean, you only have so many resources, and if there's overhires need to be hired and people have left already, I mean, this is just exacerbate. What I heard you say is reactive versus being proactive. You're reacting every day versus getting ahead of this issue.
Well, we are attempting to get ahead of the issue by bringing people on board. We do have opportunities to bring more people on board, but recruitment, this day and age, goes without saying, is a challenge.
Yeah.
There aren't many people that are willing to do the difficult job of being a police officer in this country.
Yeah.
So thankfully, there are some, and there are some very talented people willing to do this job, but those people are being courted by every agency,
Sure.
especially in our valley. So we are competing with every single agency in the valley for that small pool of talented, quality people that we would be willing to bring on board into our family.
Mayor, I'm going to let the rest of the council
Yeah.
go because I sat in the subcommittee and some of these answers.
Sure. And Councilmember Orlando, if by the end of this, if not all your questions are answered, that we'll make sure that everyone does get that opportunity. Councilmember Ellis.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief, for my goodness, this was a wonderful presentation, not only very explicit, but very touching in a sense to show me that those men and women that are in the room right now behind you, they are well committed to this city. It is very important. Council, can you please stand with me and let's give standing ovation to all those officers that are in the room right now. Thank you. I guess what I want to say tonight is that I hear you and I see you. And the fact of the matter is, there's none one of us on this dais who have not really feel that you need help. We know you need the help, and we are willing and ready to do that. There's a process, and we're all trying to go through that process. You have been waiting very patiently, and it gets to a point right now where we have to accelerate things. We are in the middle of having, right now, looking at the budget, and you are in foremost of our thoughts, mine specifically, as far as the budget is concerned. Where we going to? As you stated earlier, we do have position open right now, and we have money allocated for those positions, and we cannot hire because nobody wants to fill those positions for us. So it means that we're going to have make ourselves more competitively capable to hire. In other words, aggressively marketing. Those who are in the room right now who know people who would like to be a police officer, they need to start coming forward with those names for us to be able to hire those people. I'm willing to say yes to what you need, but just now you told me about all the problems, what's been going on and everything. But before I leave here tonight, I want to know, how many do you need? And where do you need them? And when do you need them?
Well, we need help today. But as you said, the foremost pressing concern right now is ensuring that we create a process that gives us an advantage among our competition. So that is an area that through the budget we've requested additional background investigators, and there's some software that we're working on that will help branding and get the word out. So it starts there. So tonight, it's difficult to give a specific number, but it's more than one, less than 100. Does that help?
Well,
So just, but the reality is that it's going to take a number of officers to get us to where we are humming again. And when I say humming, providing service to our
correct,
community.
correct. And this is what I want everybody to know that are in the room right now, is the fact that this is a starting conversation. It's not like we just started to talk about it, but having all of you in the room now being present, uh, you are witnessing this conversation. But this conversation has been going on.
Right.
It is, we sat down with you. I know for personally myself, from day one, I came to your office and I sat down with you and I specifically asked you, how can I help? What is it that you need? And we spoke about the mental health issues. We spoke about a different way of managing when we send someone out, that at the end of the day, there's be no tasers, no guns involved, because we will have the proper person there to make those decisions so that everybody can go home safe that night. And so that's my priority. I think that's our priority here, to make sure these things happen for you and those that are serving with you and serving us. I lived in this city for 34 years. I have never felt a day that I was not safe. And it's the fact that you are doing it and you're doing it well. But don't ever feel that. And for those of you that are in the room also, don't ever feel that you don't have the support. And I think it's just that we need to continue to have the conversations for us to get to a place where it can be a win-win and everybody can walk away knowing that we have done the best that we can for our police department.
I can certainly, and I'd be very willing and pleased to work with my staff and work with the city manager's office and create that roadmap.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Sorry. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And again, please keep coming, because if you're not in the room, your voice are not being heard. It's not just tonight. I see that you packed the room tonight. Everybody's here. You're welcome. We are happy to see you. Just keep coming to those meetings, because it's important that we see you in these meetings. It's important that you come here and voice your opinions so that we know which direction we're going. Don't wait until there is a problem to show up like this big. I want you to keep showing up big. I love it. I love showing up big, and I love the fact that you want to be part of the process. It's important. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, everyone else.
Thank you, Councilmember Ellis. Now, this isn't overtime pay being here tonight, though. We want to make that clear, right? So despite what Councilmember Ellis's encouragement is, so. Councilmember Rowe.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have any questions. I will tell you, over the past, since starting in 2015, I have had many opportunities to talk to police officers, uh, passing them in a hallway or sitting out on where they're writing a report and they stop and talk to them. And I'd pull up and talk to them. And of course, that's what a cop doesn't want, is somebody to pull up and talk to them. But I would talk to them and they would tell me that they love their job. They love working for the city of Chandler. I've heard it over and over again. I have heard also from these same folks and many others that Chandler often works a little bit shorthanded. They need help. I've heard that over and over again, not only from our labor groups, but from just individuals. I've also sat on this dais starting in 2015 and attended each year a budget discussion where we hear from all our division heads about what their needs are. Tonight we need additional CID investigators. We need additional bike team. We need training members. We need PDIT. We need communication section members, support services people. We need detention people. We need, let's build a new crime lab. You have had the podium every year. You have had the opportunity to say, we need help and we need help today. I've met with you and I've heard over and over again, we're working it out. I understand some of the politics and the government and leadership and who's in charge and who's not in charge. I understand all of that. But at the end of the day, you are the police, our chief of police. I'm unhappy to hear about this tonight in front of all these folks. I wish it's something that we could have heard along the way. I am an old timer. I'm a retired cop. I can tell you, patrol is the first place that members are taken from. We graduate a class of people, they get assigned, they get a squad, they go out, they work. All of a sudden, all the specialty assignments come forward and they say, we need him, we need her, we need him, we need her. All of a sudden, we're working short again. This is what happens. I'm very unhappy about having to give this my opinion on this. Most of the time, I don't say stuff that should be said because I care about Chandler. I love Chandler. And I know many of you do too. Most of you do. I think about a consistent number of people that are on light duty. I don't know, 12, maybe 13, maybe 10, maybe 15. That could be sometimes 2 crews that are on a regular basis not working. They might be doing some work. They might be taking calls at a desk or something like that and taking reports over the phone, but they can't respond to calls because they're on light duty. Who's filling in for them? I can tell you who's not filling in for them. Some of the officers that were working in other assignments, like at the range and things like that, because they've been added, taken out, and added to the regular count. So they're not filling in. High density housing in Chandler, that's about what's left. Thousands and thousands of new units. You guys, you ladies know what it's like to stand in the doorway on the 3rd floor of an apartment complex, stinky tobacco, rotten alcohol, dealing with some domestic violence call. I don't want to hear anybody say that is not somewhat of a future for Chandler as long as we add thousands and thousands of new units of high-density housing. I'm not asking for discussion about it because I'm not wrong about this. These are my opinions. And I could just go on and on. But those are my comments. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember, I appreciate your comments. I don't recall the last time we had a conversation, but I know that in the past when I spoke about, when asked what is required, patrol is number one, as you well stated. And that has been the focus. And that is what had to be fixed over 5 years. And the number of the items that I addressed today, again, not the first time.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Council Member. Chief, I just had one question based on this and then a comment. So you had mentioned particularly the homeless calls. I've been pretty heavily involved in homeless issues in our city for a long time. And I remember actually riding with our bike team one time to do a homeless count on the rails and decided I was more of a detriment, that they felt they had to take care of me and not just do the count. So I've only done that once. But my question is, I do know we've added a number of homeless navigators, and you had mentioned calls, and at least when they're on place, I assume a call is, we get a call, but we're also able then to defer them rather than send officers out. And I do know that's an issue that we continue to look at in our city and strategize with other cities to see what can we do. But I'd be open for more interlocking ideas with that too, that are not, even though you get the calls, our department does, are there other ways that we can strengthen this by other things going on in our city? And I'd certainly would love to not only explore the things we're talking about tonight on a plan that's going to cover for this year's hiring as well as into the future, but are there some of those other things like this, that if we strengthen another area that might get the calls but don't have to take the calls, and sending someone else who is specifically tasked and trained to do that and to get them out. So I hope that those also dialogues are going to happen in this process. I know we are with community services to take some of those types of things off the backs of our police officers, and maybe some of the mental health issues. So I do look forward to that. And as mentioned, I do look forward as we enter into our budget conversations a little bit later this month and beyond, to see a pathway for this year and the next couple of years that is going to get us to that place where we complement and our resources are met. So I don't have anything else to say, so I'm going to move on to Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief, for the presentation. You know, everybody that's here, and especially you, Chief, you need to know that the community and the council is extremely appreciative of everything you do. You know, when I talk to the community on a regular basis, and the police come up, or fire comes up, or just services in general come up, people are very happy with Chandler. People are extremely happy with our police, and they're extremely proud of what you do every day, day in and day out. To be frank, this presentation is eye-opening, and it's great to hear. I wish our subcommittees would have brought this to us earlier in a maybe not so public forum so we could address this, but that isn't what happened, so we're going to address it right here. I'd like to know how we got here in a full transparency of communication, since the public is watching and the community may be concerned. How did we get to this place? And I understand there's the recession, which, you know, we're not talking about that anymore. I understand there's PSPRS, which is a subject that I've been told by folks in the leadership within the unions we're not really supposed to talk about, but is a challenge for cities that are trying to pay off $20 million, $30 million a year in retirement benefits to make sure we honor our commitment to the men and women that serve us. And that's a commitment that I take seriously. So that means we do without in a financially responsible city. We didn't lay people off when other cities had to during the COVID recession. We just stopped hiring. we're going to continue to do financially responsible things. But this is kind of the first time that I've heard this sort of breakdown, and I'm glad I did, because it shows me that there's some places that we need to work on and get some things done, and we can do that. But there is a process we work through the budget department and Dawn's wonderful team to figure out where we can afford these things, where we can work in and make sure that we're getting on top of PSPRS and getting that paid down on a regular basis. I think CARES Act funding and other things that are coming in are going to help us tackle that problem even more so, which is going to free up more cash to do some things to be able to hire people. But at the end of the day, I want a safe community, and I don't want people talking about shootings or murders. These are murders, and murders shouldn't be happening in our society, and they do. But if we can put people on the streets that are prevent that, or find the people that do it, I want to do that in Chandler, because that is the foundation of what a city is. We provide the service of safety first, and everything else is layered on top of that, right? Then you get all the, that's the must, and then you layer on the wants. And so we're committed as a team here to make sure that that happens. We just got to work with Josh, with Dawn, with the community to get that done. And I think we can get there. It's not going to be that hard. But I want a less stressed and happier police department. So in case I do get caught speeding on McQueen Road, that, wait, no. So, I don't necessarily have a question other than how did we get here? And if there wasn't total transparency and communication between your office and us, then that's something we should talk about. Probably not tonight, but it's something we need to continue to communicate about. So thank you, Chief, for the presentation.
So Councilmember Stewart, perhaps you'll get a ticket from a red light and you won't have to worry about a disgruntled police officer. And we can further that conversation at our next meeting.
Wow. Just
Councilmember Lopez.
Too soon, Mayor, too soon. So I don't want to repeat what a lot of the council members said, but I do want to, I'm kind of a data's guy. The numbers and graphs you presented to me, again, are very telling about the policing in our community and the community in general. Anecdotally, I talk a lot about how at National League of Cities and even in the Arizona State League of Cities, I've interacted on a lot of public safety, on the public safety subject with other cities, and we are by far one of the safest cities for our population with a number of sworn. I had a council member from a city in North Carolina that did not believe me on the number of sworn we had with our crime rate. He said, that's impossible. And when we showed him the numbers on the website, he again thought I was making it up, because he said, you can't have that many people with that low of crime. But it's the attitude and the representation of those on the street, in patrol, in detectives, everyone in every touch to our citizenry that makes them feel safe, and that propagates through the rest of society in Chandler to tell them that they have a safe community. And in doing so, I do believe that is an intangible that is also seen as a deterrent to those people thinking that our police force is on the ball. So that being said, my question, so a lot of my background in project management, I always deal with, okay, we got to identify the issue. We need to identify the ask, and then we need to go to root cause. So I see two issues here. One, again, staffing. And staffing's been hard. We shifted. What I don't see in the middle here, though, is a recalibration of those numbers. Again, that performance that was done on the program in 15, which is now 16 years ago, or 16, I don't remember what it was, but it's 5 or 6 years old. Has that shifted? Do we continue to iterate whether we do need to add 1, 2, 3 more or flex? And then the other avenue is, I kind of always ask for again to the next question, which is the burning platform. What is that immediate issue that we need to address? To me, when it comes to again, policing, it is that immediate patrol, that emergency, that initial, 911 call. As you talk about type 1 crimes, you talk about response times. I didn't see it on your presentation, but in the one that we had from the subcommittee meeting, it talked about how we had a drop finally below the 5-minute response times, which I think is if you're below 5 minutes, you're doing well when it comes to statistical analysis for response. So we're hitting those marks. It seems like what I'm inferring is that immediate burning platform isn't there, but we have a major risk on the back end when it comes to a lot of this, lack of a better word, support, the detectives, the individual other crimes, the victim services, and bike, and so on and so forth. I see that as something that was, again, pooled and sacrificed to get that boarding platform done, which is patrol. I think it's time, again, now with a plan with Josh and in the future, to start coming up with solutions. And again, a multi-phase solution of an immediate need, something that we need or can do to immediately address the gap in personnel. And briefly talked with with Josh and some of the other council members. As you mentioned, we're competing not just in the valley, but statewide and nationally for police officers. So is there something that is an immediate, whether it be, again, money, whether it be attitude, whether it be council members coming out and doing a PSA on how we support our police, whatever it is. And as somebody said, I'll pee on a spark plug if it'll do any help, right? If we can do that to move the needle to get police officers to look at us ahead of anyone else. And then a shorter term plan on getting those filled, because it takes time to put people through training. It takes time to bring them up to speed, to be able to move from patrol into other gaps that we have. And then that long-term plan. But this needs to be iterative, because we need to reevaluate. And I don't know if that program was only a one-time thing or if it's a long-term that we get to do this every 2-3 years. But we need to keep on it, because that's how we don't fall behind again. So again, recommendations, some items for thought.
Thank you, Councilmember Lopez. Our immediate need is filling seats. So the recruiting efforts, and this is something that we are in the process of discussing again, but certainly this is taking it to a different level. So that is the immediate need. And to answer your question about the staffing analysis, it is something that we do each year.
Oh.
So we have been keeping it. We didn't do it last year because 2020 was an anomalous year.
Yeah.
So between the shutdowns, the 2 shutdowns, the numbers they represent COVID, the year of COVID. But we will do one again, and we are in par where we want to be for patrol. The problem is what's supporting patrol, as you mentioned, and then bringing those people in so we have the ability to hire what we're authorized now to have that buffer to weather some of the light duty and absentee. So.
Okay. And I just want to also, last comment was, so we hear this. I mean, I've been around a little bit as long as the mayor and Councilmember Rowe, but we've seen these issues. We know that you've had to flex and pool, and again, we've got a budget that everybody knows. Everybody's got a house budget, right? If you want to go on vacation, you got to be able to flex here or there to pay for a landscaping issue, or again, if you have an emergency, we got to go buy emergency equipment that was not planned for. I mean, we all have to flex, and we have to make those prioritizations, as you mentioned. But I think, again, now is the time we need to establish that long-term plan so that we can look for the future. Again, we hear also, and we see with COVID, the exhaustion that is being experienced, and it was experienced all across public safety and all in the medical industry, especially with COVID. And it's not just the sacrifice and we recognize, everybody on the dais here recognizes, it's not just the sacrifice of the police officers on the beat, the boots on the street, but it's the families and their children, the parents, and the extended family that feel that also. And we, again, as an urgency, I believe we need to start addressing that so we can at least start providing relief for them. So thank you, Mayor.
You gave me a visual. I'm going to try to have to expunge from my brain, so thank you.
Haven't you seen War Games?
Yeah. Councilmember Harris.
Thank you so much, Chief. Thank you for being here. It started out good, then it became a battle ramp. So I just want to say thank you so much for standing there and taking all this heat. And thank you to the men and women that supports Chandler and is out there every day fighting for us, making sure that we're safe. And I see the fire department out there. Thank you so much. Everyone here that's in this room really just save lives. That's their main job. They want to go back home to their families. And the people that are committing crime, we want those people in jail. And our fire department and our police department takes on a lot. And I will be remiss to overlook that. And without saying thank you so much to each one of you all for what you guys do to keep me safe when you're patrolling by my house and making sure people is doing the right thing, that makes me feel safe. I love living in a safe city where I have people who are supporting an ideal that we want to be safe. So what I want to do is just ask you a few questions, and then I'm going to just make a couple of comments. And you may have already said this, but I just kind of want to make sure that it comes forth. Since 2008 to 2021, has there been different categories of crime beginning to spring up between 2008 and 2021?
I would say yes. We've seen a proliferation in web-based crime, and that's predators online preying on our children, human trafficking. All that is, we've seen exponential increases, especially this past year with COVID, with the lockdown. A lot more vulnerable people at home online, and that's probably one of the greatest concerns that we have right now.
And then have you seen um, during this expansion of time, um, have you seen your cops work a lot of overtime? Have they been working a lot of overtime?
Yes,
Okay. Do they work their regular hours too?
right. Overtime is in addition to their regular scheduled hours.
Yes, I know.
The variety of overtime. There may be overtime because your shift is extended because you're in the middle of
Right.
the call.
And sometimes when they're on their shift, they may be getting ready to end their shift, and then they get asked to stay over because they need to cover more of the shift, right?
Right, that's another scenario. And then asked to come in on their day off to fill an open shift.
Okay. And so during last year, there was a lot of protests that you talked about, and your team had to spend countless amount of hours during that during those protests. Can you share about how many hours per day was these officers spending managing and working their regular shifts while dealing with an outside issue?
Yeah, I don't have that breakdown. I can tell you the week in June, where we essentially were fully mobilized as a police department, working 12-hour shifts. Everyone was working, and everyone worked. I think it was essentially 8 straight days. So that was a very tiresome time, especially when it ended. A lot of tired people. But there have been protests from August through November every Friday at the intersection of Chandler Boulevard and Arizona Avenue. We also sent officers, I think, for 13 straight weeks on Thursday nights through to Gilbert to assist them on their protest. And most recently, we've had about 5 or 6 weeks of protest most recently.
So it's safe to say that we're extending, when they sign that contract with us, it's safe to say that they're expanding their time in other areas, when they, versus when they got hired thinking, hey, I'm going to come here, work 40, 45 hours. Now all of a sudden they get into the role and they find out, oh, it's about 50, 60 hours, which essentially does that take away time from their family, their social life, mental health, going on vacations? Does that take away that time from those individuals who's working that extra time?
Yes, most certainly. And I'm not aware of anyone that had, um, or at least thinking that they're going to work 40 hours in this job. So we expand and contract as needed, but we are reliant on people to disrupt their lives to come in and cover when necessary, whether it's a vacancy on the street, because we have a minimum coverage, we have to have X amount of officers on the street, or is for these special events or protests. So yes, we are reliant on people to change their lives to come in and work extra for us.
And has it been the culture, and I'll wrap it up, has it been the culture of the police not really to complain when they don't have enough men versus just accomplishing the mission and getting it done? I mean, less complaining, more working, staying focused on the goal at hand. Has that been traditionally the culture even before you came to Chandler? But has that been the culture to do the job, don't complain, keep your eyes for it? Has that been the culture traditionally in the police force?
No, they complain every day,
Good.
but they still do the job here, and they do it remarkably well.
So this is what I'm summing this up to be. Our cops need support, council. They need support. Um, I've heard from different council members that shared the how did we get here and what we need to do. Well, he's here now, council, and he's taken a brave stance to say this is what he needs. So what I'm requesting with the council is to ask Chief Duggan to go back to his team, put together a specialized group of individuals that's going to put together a comprehensive plan, not guessing 1 to 100, not any of that, but really putting together a thorough plan addressing the needs and what that looks like over a period of time, including recruitment, including making sure those departments that needs expansion or needs more touching to, that they will do that, that you will do that with their team, and that you will come back to council and with a comprehensive plan, fully not worry about what the budget's going to look like, but just staying focused on making sure our men and women, because what I don't want to happen in Chandler, I don't want tired cops pulling me over. If I'm going to get pulled over, Mark will, I won't. Uh, but what I want them to do is I want them to be refreshed. I want them to be able to have time with their family. I'm a military veteran myself. Every day, I wanted to come back home to my family. I want to be refreshed because when we have fresh eyes on something, we can get things done much faster. I want the cops, I want them to be able to go on vacation, spend time, get mental health. If they need some mental health, they see something on the streets that does something to them, then they need to be able to take the appropriate amount of time so that way we can put together action versus worrying that if I don't come to work, my brother or my sister won't get coverage. And that's what I'm hearing, that they don't have coverage. And what I'm hearing from the council is that we want to support, we understand where you are, and now we're going to put that back on you and your team to come together with a full comprehensive report addressing some of the things that you talked about, some of the things that we talked about, so we can meet together over time. And before I end my comments, I want you to think about it futuristically too. As some of my council constituents have shared that there's apartments here, they're coming, and housing. We got out of meeting. This is what you need to be thinking about as well. 3,000 new jobs from Intel. NXP manufacturing jobs, 100. Honeywell, 585 new jobs. We got semiconductor plants, 25 new jobs. Locomotives, 20 jobs. Another Comtech, 400 jobs. And that's not including families that's going to come along with it. So in the next couple of years, you're going to see a boom of 30 to 40,000 people coming into this area. I want you also to address the future issues with that employment corridor and with new people coming to our city. So please make sure the comprehensive plan includes all those different details so that way 3 years from now we're not looking at a situation, but we've already addressed this. So that's kind of what my recommendations are, council, and those conclude my words.
So, Councilmember, technically, he's hired by a city manager. So I'm going to modify yours to say, meet with our acting city manager, develop that plan, and then work with us. That's the protocol of how this works. So he needs to go to the city manager and not to us directly in that setting, because he's hired by him.
Mayor.
All in that
case.
order.
So,
All in
yeah,
that order.
yeah,
Thank you, Mayor.
yeah.
That's the correction, but all in that order.
So
Thank you.
council, I'm going to invite, I've got our CLIA and CLASA folks. I realize we could probably talk here a long time, but is there any other burning
Mayor, yeah.
question you have before I invite the others
So,
to the chief?
yeah, thank you, Mayor. So Chief, first of all, and council, some of you may be shocked, some of you may be awed, some of you may be concerned, some of you may be you're concerned at the chief. I'm the one that asked him. So if you have shock and awe, if you have someone to blame for this, talk to me. Don't talk to him. He's only doing his job. I asked him to come forward because of the issue is passionate with all of us on this council. So he's not to blame for this. Okay, I am. So I'll take the pins and needles on that one. Second, Chief, we could sit here all night long and we could talk about why this didn't happen, where was this, where was that. It's all talk. That's not the question tonight. The question is the chief needs help. And what does he need to get that help? And how soon he needs that help. That's the question here tonight. That's what we should be talking about. What does he need? Chief, I'm going to ask you between you and I now.
Nobody else in the room?
Nobody else in this room. How many people you need this year and the next couple of years to take care of this sheet chart that you have?
Well, if you look at the long-term plan, it's going to be dozens.
Chief, I'm asking you again. You have this plan, Chief. You have this plan. I know you do. Okay, you've been working on this plan for years. You said it in your brochures. How many people you need from 2021 to 2022 and beyond?
Any amount would be beneficial.
Chief?
The first priority, Councilman Orlando, is to hire the vacancies we have right now.
Okay.
So that would give us 15 bodies tomorrow if we could hire them.
Okay.
And then we can build on that. So,
How many,
like I
Chief,
said,
do you need?
I need 15 right now.
Councilmember, let's work this plan with
Right.
them.
But you
So
have,
those
I don't
are our
think that's a good
vacancies. We
question
need to
for
hire
him.
those right now, and then we
And-
can build on that.
and then you could build on that. Okay, so we have, as you know, COVID dollars. It's called the American Recovery Act. It's a 4-year plan that you could actually use this money. So I would suggest that we did this back in the 1990s. In fact, some of the officers might even be in this room, where we took federal dollars and over a period of time, we matched it with our own, and we gradually took those folks in and put them under our own recurring dollars. We have a lot of things going on right now. So Chief, you need to come back with this plan sooner rather than later. I know you have dialogue with the city manager, and I expect, city manager, that we have at least the first set of numbers we need on Friday, the 23rd, so that we can start looking at what we need to do for 2021. You already have those 15 numbers. That's my point you're making. You already had those 15 numbers. I didn't ask you what you have to hire. I asked you what you need in addition to those 15 people. So I expect that answer on the 23rd. Fair?
Mayor.
I do want to say again, he's his boss, and let those two work.
No, I mean,
but
Josh, fair?
Assistant Acting City Manager.
Mayor, members of the council, thank you for this robust discussion this evening. I think it's very helpful for us to hear your perspectives on where you want to see the city go and how you see our public safety system evolving as we continue to grow and evolve as a city. I do want to put a little bit of this in context, and I think there's been some comments about how this process unfolds and how we can do this the best way, looking for solutions. And I appreciate that solutions-oriented focus that you've all spoken about this evening. It has been a wild year, I think, for everybody. I think that would be the understatement of the year, frankly. In this very room a year ago, we were talking about cutting the budget dramatically. We were talking hiring new staff would be the last thing on our minds. At that point, we cut $10.5 million from last year's budget because of what we thought coronavirus was going to do to our city finances, and then another $20 million in the current fiscal year. So it has changed dramatically. To Councilmember Orlando's point, we have an opportunity now, I think, that you have all been aware of. We've had many conversations about it. In fact, just a couple weeks ago on March 25th in Council's budget workshop, the message was received loud and clear to city staff that you want to see these one-time dollars that we are anticipating, and I do want to emphasize it's one-time dollars we are anticipating because we have not seen those in hand yet, to come back to you with creative solutions. Figure out how we can leverage those dollars to make impacts on some of these issues the chief has discussed tonight, to use those one-time dollars to creatively affect ongoing savings in the budget so that we can look at some of these ongoing commitments the city will have years into the future, and do this in a logical, sustainable, and forward-thinking fashion. And that is exactly what we are going to do. That message, again, was received loud and clear. So Chief and I have been talking daily about this issue. Our Chief Financial Officer, our Human Resources Division, we're going to look at this challenge holistically. There are things that we can do involving all aspects of our organization to free up capacity for our officers, to give them the support they need, to be able to recruit and retain the best and brightest that we've always had here in Chandler. So I think to kind of look at the path forward here, this is exactly what we needed to hear. And the message has been received loud and clear. And certainly through the budget process that has worked so well for us for many years, you are going to see us come back with creative solutions in just a few weeks.
Okay, and Mayor, just to follow up. So Josh, are you looking at some one-time dollars to prime the pump here to get these folks? Because it's going to take a while, as you know, as he indicated earlier. We're looking at one-time dollars to look at priming the pump so that we could get ahead of this game versus again being reactive.
Yep.
Councilmember, we're having that conversation with these one-time
I
dollars.
want to just
Yeah.
clarify one thing, Mayor. Okay. Are we looking at that as well?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Orlando, like I said, everything is on the table. We are looking creatively at how to address this issue from every angle, and that includes what you're talking about. How do we get ahead of some things and use those dollars creatively to anticipate several years down the road what we're going to need?
Thank you. All right.
Vice Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think it's great, and thank you for your input there. We've already talked about this. So we had a meeting about a month and a half ago, and we were talking about staffing. We had a meeting about 2 weeks ago. We had our strategic vision plan. We've already talked about this. So this has already been in the works about staffing. Chief and I had a meeting about 2 weeks ago as well. So this is well and good, and I think you knew that, Councilmember Orlando. Did you not? No. You didn't know we had meetings and talking about staffing. So the point is that we're going to get this taken care of, and I'm really glad that you all are here. It's important that you're here, but we have a process in Chandler where we work through the budget to make sure that we can afford the things, not only now, but 20 years from now, to make sure that we cover off on the retirement benefits and everything that go along with that. So I'm committed to doing that. And this is a generational issue. So we talked about those numbers earlier. From 2008 to today, we are at the same number of sworn officers. That number needs to go up. And we heard it loud and clear tonight. And it's good that it was in public, but we have had these conversations before. So it's good that it's in public. We'll keep moving forward. And Josh has some direction, not only tonight, but from before to do that as well. So thank you.
Council, we're starting to say the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So I want to move on. I do still, thank you, Chief. I do still want to invite, I do have 2 speaker cards from our 2 unions. So let me first ask Michael Collins, if you're available, please state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes on the normal speaker for that, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm Michael Collins. I'm the president of the Chandler Law Enforcement Association, and my address is 250 East Chicago Street in Chandler. Mayor and Council, I appreciate this opportunity to address you all tonight. I came up here with a very loose idea of what I wanted to say based on how we had this discussion tonight. And I heard several things that struck me that I thought were important to consider moving forward. Let me first say that I've worked as an employee here at the Chandler Police Department for almost 27 years. I've lived in Chandler that long. My kids have grown up here. I still have some in schools here, and we have deep roots in this community. And so my concerns over the years have been the same as have been expressed by the chief. But several things struck me as important in the conversation that just took place. Exhaustion. Our people are exhausted. And I know that that point has been made. They have been asked to do more with less for a very long time. Those numbers were publicly addressed by the chief. But I think that's important that you understand. I heard burning the candle at both ends. They have done that for a very long time. But in addition to that, I also heard that we will show up, we will respond to calls for service, and we will always be there. Okay. The last thing that struck me is a path forward. Okay. We realize that this problem didn't come to light in just the last 6 months, although it has been greatly exposed and shown in those almost the year of COVID in the last 6 months due to some of the protests that we've had to deal with. And now that we've identified this problem, what our members, almost 270 members of the Chandler Law Enforcement Association are looking for from you not only is direction, but support and a light at the end of the tunnel, because we realize that we have challenges in hiring people and bringing them on board. And there's very little chance that that's going to change in the next 3 weeks, unfortunately. And so with that case, at least when we're done here tonight, I can talk to them and I can assure them that we have your commitment, all of you, to look at a path, a comprehensive path forward, not just this year, not just next year, but there is a plan in place and there is a light at the end of the tunnel. So again, thank you all for your time and your consideration tonight.
Yeah. And I would, just from council, I would say there is a plan being devised to be in place, because that's, I mean, that's the next step, but you can carry that message from this council. Next, Tom Lovejoy from Plaza. Congratulations on your recent marriage.
Thank you.
Your name and address for the books, 3 minutes.
Well, my address isn't in Chandler because I can't afford to live here. It's expensive. I live in a P.O. box, and it's 261 if you want to send me a letter. Meanwhile, I spend an extraordinary amount of time at our police department every week because there is a lot to do, and there's very few of us to do that, and we're tired. And I think the one message that I want to give all of you that that I get conveyed to me by the sergeants and the lieutenants, the people that I represent, is that we're looking for hope. That's what we want, because we don't have that right now. The 17 people that you keep talking about, we're not going to see them until late next year, even if we hired them right now or started that process, because we don't have them. If you guys want a poster that says, come to Chandler and be a police officer, you need to put on there says, come to Chandler where we're average, because that's what we are. We're nothing less than that because of our pay is average and the things that we have to offer are average. And when our recruitment guys go forward and do that, they're going to other agencies. It's just that simple. We need to step up, and that's up to every one of you. Matt, thank you for bringing all of this to the attention. And it's not fair for any one of you, well, except for a couple of you that weren't here. Y'all heard my presentation back in 2018. You heard me playing back then for help, and nothing happened. So that's why we're here today. I'm glad that there's dialogue. I'm very happy that we have some appreciative council members that are here. I appreciate your comments, your dialogue, and your commitment to helping us get ahead. But this is too late. This isn't a conversation that we need to have, for what the future and waiting out for a longer plan. We have it. The chief has the plan. Matt tried to call him out for that. He has it. He just can't share it right now, and he will when that time comes. But we're tired. We're very tired. And it's hard for us because we come to work every day. For instance, in my unit right now in computer crimes, I have one ICAC, Internet Crimes Against Children detective. Last year, this time from the beginning of the year, we had 6 tips come in from NECMEC. That's where we get all the tips from all of the big people in the Yahoo and the Google and all those, Twitter and different things like that, Facebook. But this year we have 61. So, while everybody was at home and their houses weren't getting burglarized, I have a pretty good idea of what they were doing. Yesterday alone, we did our own search warrant in the city of Chandler for internet crimes against children, while the FBI was right across the street from the police department doing one as well. And these things are what we live with. This is what we weigh down and what we lose sleep over, because we see the faces of the children that are being destroyed in these photographs and these images. And we feel stuck because there's not a lot that we can do about it. We need your help, and we need your help 2 years ago. So we need to expedite this. And OD, I thank you for pushing forward, for making this happen as fast as you can, even if it's not the way to do things. We need that. We appreciate you. And Christine, we appreciate you too, and appreciate the things that you're doing to push that forward and your support for us. And Matt, I don't even know what to tell you. I just thank you so much for everything you're doing. Had the same problem back in 1993. If you guys want to follow what there is to do, go back and look what we did back in 1993 when we came forward and we hired 50 cops, because that's what we need. And we need you to do that, and we need you to be there for us. If you have our back, you'll find a way to do that.
Thank you, Tom. Sergeant Lovejoy. Council, I'm going to move on to unscheduled public appearance. We had one card that was submitted. That's enough different that it stands on its own. Derek Hathaway, are you here, please? Yeah. Derek wanted to talk about homelessness and police misuse of, I can't read that word, I'm sorry.
Okay.
But sir, you've got up to 3 minutes. State your name and address. For the
Okay.
record, we cannot interact with you because this is unscheduled public.
That's okay. It'll be brief. Hello, my name is Derek Hathaway. I'm a homeless veteran. I'd like to start with thanking the council for allowing me to speak. My issue is about the Chandler Police Department. Sometime around midnight, when they came to my place of residence at 1914 West Cortez Circle, in the fall of 2019, I was trespassed from my residence. I had a 1-year lease paid in full to the property owner, John Black. My personal things, including my truck and enclosed trailer, were reported to the Chandler Police stolen from not allowing me access to my property. I spoke to the chief of police from Chandler. He told me that I did not need to file a complaint on the officers or the department, that he would do something about it. Then I even went to the mayor's office and left a copy of my lease and all supporting documents supporting my issue. And not for lack of effort, I've also tried everything to maintain a stable living place. I would like to see something done about this. My request is, if anything was done, I would like to see if I can get the 1-year lease that I lost, that paid in full, paid by the city of Chandler. That'd be nice, So that's all I really have to say about it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, thank you.
Council, next on our agenda is current events. I'll be very brief. This week has been and is Chandler Gives Week, a time to give back to our nonprofits that have worked hard to serve our community through the pandemic. And I want to thank you that have been supporting many of our nonprofits during this week. And one kind of fun way, Vice Mayor Stewart and I are going off at a dish to dish this week at Ginger Monkeys Charity Cook-Off. A percentage of the sales from each of our dish. Mine will benefit FAR City Chandler. Vice Mayor Stewart's dish will benefit ICANN. The winner this week will head off to the finals to take on the winner of Councilmember Odie Harris and Chamber CEO Terry Kimball. Ought to be a good one too. So you have 3 more days to get out to Ginger Monkey and order the ultimate mayor bacon burger. And that's all I got. Councilmember Harris.
Thank you. I have no announcements tonight.
Councilmember Lopez.
Okay. I didn't want to jump the gun. The city of Chandler is joining AMWA, which is the Association of Municipal Water Users. I put the A in the wrong place. Arizona Municipal Water Users Association. There you go. This month to celebrate the Water Awareness Month and Arizona Water Professionals Appreciation Week. Water professionals have played a vital role over the past year as our health and safety were reliant on access to water and dependable wastewater services. Anecdotally, I happened to go visit my daughter in Houston a few months ago when the winter storm came and we didn't have water for a day. And sometimes you realize that, yeah, it's good to have bottled water in the house, but you kind of forget that you need water to flush the toilet. So, yeah, water has a very, very important role in our lives. So in 2020, the city treated delivered 23 billion gallons of water to Chandler customers, and through innovative programs and services, city staff has saved Chandler residents over 97 million gallons of water. So this week, I wanted to give a shout out and an extra thanks to the Chandler's 2005 water and wastewater workers as we salute their service as they provide and recognize them for the efforts of all those men and women in our water industry for their commitment and passion and dedication to letting us be able to flush our toilets, brush our teeth, and take showers. Thank you.
Vice Mayor.
Nothing for me tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Councilmember Rowe.
Thank you, Mayor. I think some of us would agree that I've said enough. Thank you.
Councilmember Ellis.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to everyone that are here tonight, and specifically, I would like to thank the Shankies for being here. Thank you so much for your support and everything that you do. That's it tonight for me.
Councilmember Orlando. All right. Acting City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Just briefly, I just wanted to say thank you again for your support of Team Chandler. I know the mayor mentioned it earlier tonight when the consent agenda was approved, but we truly do have the very best people here in Chandler. I've witnessed that every day in the 4 years that I've worked here. They are second to none, and they have endured a very, very difficult year, and they have thrived through it and been so creative in how they have provided great service to our community. So just want to say thank you to all of you for your leadership in recognizing them here tonight. I know it means a tremendous amount on behalf of the employees that you've done that. Thank you.
All right. With that, that concludes our meeting. We are adjourned.